Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. All right, so let's go ahead and go and discuss what the issues are about security. It's all over the place and different meetings now. Now we've got retired Commander John Danjuma. He's a former Navy intelligence officer. Good morning and thank you for coming on today. Well, clearly this should concern anyone, anything about security. But all of these meetings, our approach to getting a solution, what's your impression of all of this?
Well, there has to be a meeting of minds, to find solutions to the problems that have, in quote, resisted solutions. But question is there anything new, that's going to be said that has not been said? What is needed is to swing into action and begin to put into place resolutions.
You don't think there's anything new that will be said?
What is new that can be said that has not been said? That's the question. For decades now, people have been saying that the foundation of the nation is not stable. People need to see themselves as Nigerians first, but people still see themselves based on regions or religion, or one of the sections or the other.
How does that contribute to this problem?
Problem of security?
Yeah.
What is important is to see that a vision is necessary.
Are you referring to the citizens or those in security circles?
Are those in security circles the ones that are the solution or the problem?
Aren't they the ones who are put in there to provide the solutions?
If they want to put the solutions, they have to take into consideration the atmosphere or the country. The country itself needs people who believe in it. There are many people who do not believe in Nigeria.
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand that. Are you referring to the security forces?
Some of them.
Oh.
There are some people within the military today we've had before who are fit columnists. You've not heard?
Now that is a big
Is this something that is very well known by everyone in the security value chain?
I wouldn't know. Not by everyone. Is there anything that is known by everyone in the first place? No. But I know that the fact that this problem remains unsolved is because there are people who are consistently working against the resolution of the security problem.
Did you experience anything of such while you were in service?
Yes. We say that in the military regime, the greatest threat is the military itself. You see comrades, you see your classmates turning against you, So some people, in fact, at that time, were even afraid to go to the mess because it was thought, that was during Abacha regime, it was thought that some people would come and record whatever it is and then take it to higher authority. So I wouldn't say it's not impossible to think that the activities, the thoughts of those who are fit columnists, have an effect, a negative one, on the resolution of the conflict, the security situation. That's my view.
This is a deep, fundamental problem, because they're supposed to build on some strength. But if this is, how widespread is this anyway?
To the extent that they influence the outcomes, to that extent.
They influence the... Wow.
I'm actually very, very concerned about this. For you, how long do you think this perception of yours has lingered in the
perception
armed
of
forces?
reality.
the reality of this perception. For how long do you think it has lingered? You mentioned the Abacha regime that started some 1995 or thereabouts. Is it since that time that it's been on, or it's been before, or it's been since since we came
the
to
foundation,
democracy?
when I say the foundation, I'm even going back to pre-independence. If you remember General Gone, you know, he wasn't the senior most army officer, you know, but a Westerner whose name I do not recall clearly now, who was supposed to head the military. The lower ranks were not loyal, were not in support of that. You know, remember I spoke about religion. So because they were populated by mostly from one part of the country and he belonged to another part, he was not likely to gain their loyalty. And what happened? He was removed. I think they gave him an ambassadorial post, you know, outside the country before the general came in. So it has been consistent that people, the ethnicity that you see today spread along our politics also is deeply embedded within the military. And it has not helped. Because if you have a promotion list, for example, you have to balance it. North, south, east, and west. Why don't you just go for merit? You know, so.
All right, we're going to bring in retired Colonel Ola Majeyogbe. He also joins us. He's a former commandant of the Nigerian Army School of Intelligence. He's a former commandant of the SSS Academy, also a member of the Presidential Fact-Finding Committee on the Abduction of Chibok Girls. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, listening to retired Commander Danjuma about how ethnicity seems to be tearing the fabric of the force, one wonders, how then can they forge a common front? But first of all, is this new to you? Have you heard this before?
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning, Nigeria. It is not new to me. But I would like to explain my perception as follows. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, has some provisions for such things like federal character. So, when the military is doing any recruitment, they make sure that the candidates come from every geopolitical zone. In fact, at one point, I remember General Babangida making the statement, namely that there are some states or groups that are complaining about not being adequately represented. And what General Babangida said was very insightful. He said, we can only ensure that we come together. There is no way to ensure that all those who come together will survive for the same length of time. So it is because there is this provision that you must have adequate representation so that no part of the country feels marginalized. And also, this is my thinking on the matter. One reason that we have difficulties with national cohesion is that you will find the average Nigerian in any form of federal establishment is there because he is representing a state. So you will find that most of the time he is loyal to those on whose behalf is in that establishment. You will find that during the promotion exercise, appointments, and so on and so forth. If I am representing my state of origin, then I have to protect the interest of that state. And it's so difficult that it causes all sorts of problems for those on active service.
Would you then say, on the back of what you've just said now, that we are paying lip service to fighting insurgency, banditry, and all forms of criminality in the country?
I do not agree with you completely, but I must also say that there is a lot of merit in the question that you have raised. I do not think that the challenge has to do with ethnicity, federal representation, and all that. For me, the number one problem is the lack of political will on the side of those who have responsibility. I can tell you something for free. I believe this completely. I thank God that I had quite some experience in the armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, SSS, and all of that. So I can tell you, government always has all the intelligence it requires. But in Nigeria, many of our politicians and those in top government positions are more interested in protecting the interests of the part of this country that they come from. I'll give you one example straight away. Someone who has been a governor is now a senator, and they say, okay, you must propose a bill. And he says, the bill I'm proposing is that you must give repentant Boko Haram elements the same treatment you are giving to the Niger Delta militants. And I am shocked. A militant and a terrorist are two different kinds of people. I was in the presidential committee on the Niger Delta amnesty, so I know what I saw. These people were talking to us, they were phoning us, do this thing quickly. Terrorists don't talk to anybody. They want to die. What they ask for is not possible. President Jonathan, convert. You know, so I think that is the problem.
Okay.
That is.
In addition to that,
yes.
I mean, still wanting to hear some part of your experience while you were in service. Did you, at any time, were you prevailed upon when you had to take a professional decision based on ethnic consideration?
Unfortunately so. Let me start from one experience when I had the privilege of training a whole set of cadets who were picked from every part of the country. When we finished the examinations and the assessments, I wrote to the headquarters saying, look, X number of cadets have failed. What I was told, I was a major at the time, so you shut up. What do you mean by some people failed? I said, they failed. He said, look, we cannot publish this thing because you are going to have protests from those areas that have not been represented. Well, I was very difficult at the time also because I was young and brash. So I said, okay, I am not going to sign that they qualified. We had to reach a compromise in which I took the unsuccessful cadets back to make sure that we make up for those aspects in which they failed. It is not always that brazen, but many times it does not take a lot of attention to discover that the decision that has been taken is not on merit, that the decision may be because of the background of the official who has to act. Look at Plateau State. Look at the number of people who were killed. I have not seen one person arrested. Up till today, the government has not declared the Fulani herdsmen as a terrorist group. Those things I find them very, very ridiculous.
Well, All right, let me bring it back here, even though, yes, there are reports we had this week, I think, when some of those who were suspected to be responsible for some of the killings were paraded. Yes. And then I'm not sure what campaigns, or everybody were one brush, which is what we're trying to address. But let me ask you, Lieutenant Commander. Now, one wonders, how are we not supposed to look at the military? We're supposed to see them as a professional body, you know, one united front, fighting terrorism, coming up with the solutions. But is this institutionalized, or you think that it doesn't really affect the output, the overall output of the army?
How can it not? How can it not? A family, or how do they put it? A house divided against itself cannot stand. If there is any falsehood that the Nigerian people have swallowed, is the indivisibility, or the facade, you know, that, oh, the military is one entity that, you know, cannot be divided. That's not true. In fact, it is that same institution that is deeply divided, you know, if we would speak the truth. Because if you are going to get the solutions to your problems, you would better come out clear and speak them out. How come today people are saying that they would rather the service chiefs go? How come it is an issue that the service chiefs come from a particular part of the country and from a particular religion? And how does that affect, you know, the country? In other climes, you know, I mean, for example, the Chief of Navy Staff, you know, but generally, you know, why should that be an issue for a country like Nigeria? Why shouldn't the solution to the problems, the intractable so far problems of security, why hasn't that been the focus? Why must these people, you know? So it goes on to show that there is deep discontent. The morale is seriously low, you know, for some. Like I expected, you know, my classmate, the one that, the last man standing, I think he left last year, you know. So you can see that, and we expected, actually, because he was a star performer. Even the United States, you know, recommended him. You know. But at the end of the day, many courses have passed. Do you know the morale, the fighting force, you know what? It is not the dog in the fight, it's the fight in the dog. Once you kill it by such moves, you know, when you show a tendency to prefer one side to the other, the effect is you kill morale, then you cause division, and then when people see that, oh, what really matters is not performance, it's just how I get a godfather to back me up. You're not going to get a fighting force.
Well, this has the potential of taking all our time for today. It's a big problem, which, I mean, they were in service. Yeah. They know it better than anyone else because they've been there. But let's also look at some of these issues that were raised by the authorities concerning what they think will provide the solution. Governor of Borno State, he had a meeting with some of those security chiefs too, and he was saying that the army needed to take over Lake Chad because they thought that that's a channel through which arms, you know, ammunition get into the country and some other areas. So how key or how significant do you think that is? Should they go ahead and do that? What kind of impact will they have on the scheme of things?
Well, for me, anything to do that will attract international opprobrium, anything that would make Nigeria look bad in the international community may not be the best step. But there is this principle of, you know, holding the ground and holding the enemy at his gates. You know, if you look at the American system, within the setting, within the American subcontinent, I call it a subcontinent, even though it's a country, you hardly find these, the kind of terrorism we have, you know, where terrorists, you know, would make videos within the country, you know, and nothing will happen. So the Americans have succeeded in chasing. You keep them on the run. You keep the terrorists on the run. You don't go, you gain some ground and then you go to sleep and then they come and attack and then you now push them back. No, you keep the pressure on.
Okay. Well, Colonel, I mean, you were in the intelligence field, and so perhaps one wonders, with due respect to the governor, but he as a civilian, one would have thought, look, the army should have known all of these measures. Why would they have to wait for it to come from the governor for them to consider that as a problem if they haven't already?
This is one of the challenges that we have in my experience. A political leader, in relating to security forces, has to remember that these guys are professionals. And the political leader is unlikely to have the depth of knowledge of that professional. So when they go ahead and try to dictate what a professional should do, we have problems. But the armed forces have this problem. The Constitution is clear. You secure the territory, territorial integrity, but you must also be subject to the civilian authority. Many times when those who are in political office give orders to servicemen, it can be very confusing. But let me just make this point quickly. I think it is very important with respect to how does ethnicity and religion affect the cohesion of the armed forces. This is how. I like to give a very, very sensitive example. Look at the number of coups d'etats that were announced. You will find that when a coup d'etat is announced by somebody from side A, it fails. Whereas if those involved in the coup are from side B, it succeeds. But it is not all bad. One thing that helps is that when you get into the service, the kind of training that you have is impossible to describe. So you will find that these people are from various parts of the country. Yet, the kind of bond among them, one very important statement. I am a Yoruba man from the southwest. I'm a Christian. The best opportunities for training, the best opportunities for appointments in my entire career were by Fulani people who are Muslim. So the point I'm trying to make is this. We have this basic problem of how did you enter. For instance, I was an instructor in the Defense Academy. And they will say, for this year, people must come from every state. Some states, people score as much as 90%. Some states, the highest scorer is 30%. Well, you have to take them. But I am comforted by the fact that what the training does is make you willing to give up your life for a colleague.
So let me ask you this, Colonel. So when you notice all of those things, did you raise it to the appropriate quarters?
Yeah, I did not, because I was not ready to die at the time.
Oh.
This is a place where you are so conditioned. Let me give you a small example. 10 of you are in a room and you have various ranks. The commander is there. He is interested in something. As you begin to discuss, he is seeing the contribution of everybody. You know, if somebody who is senior to you say, you are very stupid, you will be stupid not to say yes, sir. Because if you say, I am not stupid, okay. So the senior officer is lying. He will charge you with a bogus charge. Conduct to the prejudice of military discipline. That thing has no meaning.
But Colonel, I thought when you sign up to the army, anything can happen.
Yeah, but suicide is not one of the things. I know when I became senior, in fact, only the other day, a close friend of mine was talking to me. He said, listen, you like words like idiot, shut up, And I said, yes. You see, I'll give you a small example. I was a young lieutenant in the Nigerian Defense Academy, and somebody who was just a couple of months senior took a vehicle meant for all of us. He left us stranded. Eventually, I met him. Excuse me, sir, how could you have done that to us? He said, what do you mean? All of you are junior to me. I said, okay. Then he said, by the way, you are very stupid to ask that question. So I said, excuse me, sir, I am not stupid. I got 7 days extra duty. I couldn't go to my house. And let me also say something so that Nigerians can know, those who want their relations to serve in the armed forces. Military law is not for justice. Military law is to promote discipline. It is very unusual to find people of different ranks. The senior man has done something wrong. The army will not say the junior man is right.
Okay, well, Colonel, let me bring this to Commander Danjuma now. So far, both of you have served in the armed forces, and that's, of course, what we have been talking about. These issues that we are raising are not limited. Security challenges, confronting security issues are not limited to just the armed forces. We have the police, we have the SSS, we have, at least 3 intelligence, units, all from the NSO at the time. What are they doing? What do you think their own failings or responsibilities are in this going forward? Many people have talked about the failure of intelligence gathering and implementation or use. What is wrong here, and what can we do to move forward?
When we begin to focus on the government, as a solution to the problem, I think that sometimes we should also focus on the people. For example, we now have a system that has failed to protect the good people. Our system, security system now, has failed to withdraw arms from the bad people. The bad people are just going all over the place, killing good people. This system that we have cannot prevent them from carrying guns, but this same system prevents good people from carrying guns to protect themselves.
The law doesn't allow that.
The American system that we pretend to copy says that people must not be prevented, that the right of the people to protect themselves must not be taken away from them. It's a right. It's a natural right.
Yeah, but they have
it's not something granted by the government.
They have laws that allow you to bear arms.
Good. Now, does that not show that there should be a change in that direction?
You think we should be allowed to bear arms
in
as
the
citizens? No, I mean back home here.
Communities that are left high and dry and have not been protected so far by the government agencies, whether security or those that fire guns, should not be left high and dry because, of failure of intelligence or this or that.
But they themselves, in those communities, they usually have, vigilante groups and all of that. And for instance, Lagos State has Neighborhood Watch. Ondo State has just started its own, security, silo, so to speak. Aren't those, something?
This point is very important. I have spoken to my people. In Plateau State, for example, I've spoken to some, particularly after some attacks. And then what I am told is that immediately after these people have come and gone, then some government agencies would come and sweep all the protective gear, all the protective small arms that they have, and disarm them. So I know that one way that communities can be protected. Look at how many people do you have in the army? How many people do you have, to protect in the police? And how many communities do we have? What is the population? So for me, if you in the United States, you go out to kill people, whether as an individual or a group, you are most likely not going back home.
That's for
Let's take it to Colonel. Colonel, the same question that the president was asking the service chiefs. How is it that these terrorists and localities, they are not short of small arms? What kind of answer do you think that will elicit?
Good. Incidentally, I also belong to the Presidential Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons. Weapons come into this country through a number of sources. Some are smuggled into the country. When troops go into combat in war-torn areas, some of them manage to smuggle weapons in. When criminals attack armed security men, like it happened recently, when they kill them, they take their weapons. Also, because this society is has an incredible level of criminality, some armed members of the armed forces and the police and NDLEA sell weapons to criminals. One vehicle was intercepted, I think about 2 weeks ago. They saw Kalashnikov, which is everybody's weapon. What frightened me is that these guys also had a general purpose machine gun. What are you doing with a GPMG that can kill at 2 kilometers away or bring down an aircraft? But let me now try to explain how that affects the insurgency. Number one, there are certain basic things you must do if you want to win against terrorists and so on. Number one, you must have a force that can fight, like the general infantryman. Number two, you must have intelligence that is timely, actionable, and credible. Number three, you must have in place a system of psychological warfare. Four, you must have enough men, put boots on the ground. You must have special forces. I'll give you one example. If terrorists chose to hold us hostage, as we stay in this room, and you just walk to a battalion, and then you carry the general infantryman, they will kill all of us. So you need special forces. We did not have them before the crisis. Two, you are media people. See how much psychological warfare the terrorists, Shekau, he will look straight into the camera. Buhari, Buhari, Buhari. Have you seen one effort by the armed forces to counter that? This is an idea. It is not going to go away. In other words, you must discredit that idea.
Okay.
Otherwise, more people, you kill some, the others come. Hungry people.
All right, Colonel. One wonders if the army were to counter that. I'm just wondering, are they supposed to make it public? But let's bring in Mr. Hannibal Owaifo, who is a legal practitioner, but is also the president of African Bar Association. He joins us via Zoom this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Skype, today on the program. Now, what the gentlemen have said about the situation of what they think is a key challenge in the army, what can we do legally speaking in terms of ensuring that the police themselves play or take their right to a place and play a very important role in the scheme of things moving forward?
Good morning, channels. I want to thank the gentlemen, retired officers have been on the screen for the efforts they've made to explain the security challenges we have in Nigeria, which have become so intractable, disgraceful, and totally unacceptable. But much as we explain this, to my mind, and to the organization I represent, and for us too in the Southeast Southside professionals of Nigeria, The security challenges facing Nigeria has to do with the structural foundation. The structural foundation of the country is faulty. From independence, we're almost getting it right, but successful military governments, coups and counter-coups have led to the destruction of the structural foundation of Nigeria. This deficiency in structural foundation has led to injustice, tribalism and nepotism, religious fundamentalism in governance, massive corruption, opaque governance, and inexplicable quota arrangements, which is deceitful and unhelpful. The gentleman that spoke earlier had mentioned most of this. Particularly, one of the speakers mentioned this quota arrangement. Unfortunately, when you have a federation of this nature and power is centralized, and then the federating units are armless, the federating units are powerless, the federating units are wingless, and then you gather a group of people together in the middle who knows next to nothing about what the ordinary man in Calabar is facing.
Mr. Whiteful, let me ask you, I mean, yes, they've highlighted the challenges, but we need solutions. They've talked about things that need to be addressed in the long run, in the long term. But right now, people, communities, they need to be protected. What should we be doing moving forward?
First and foremost, powers must devolve back to the region, to the federating unit. We must allow security challenges, we must amend the laws to allow security challenges to be tackled right from where it is going on, to be tackled at areas where it's going on. The arrangement where you send people to carry out security operations in areas they don't know will not work. That's why I said we have structural foundation. We can have an emergency military operation. We can have an emergency police operation. Has it led us anywhere? We need to give powers to communities, I mean real powers, to communities to have security outfits. We should decentralize it. We should decentralize most of the... That
will require a constitution amendment, isn't it?
There are security challenges.
That will be amended the constitution, is that?
Correct, that's what I'm saying. That's why I said from the beginning, our foundation is bad. We need to admit this and we need to deal with it.
Okay, let me let the gentleman in the studio also respond to the same question, talking about solutions. Colonel, do you subscribe to that?
Well, first, if it were possible, I think that will help. But in a situation in which even in the federal government, the people see themselves as representatives of their communities. And the process, as we very well know, of the amendment of the Constitution is so tedious. So I think rather than try to use the law, I think what is happening in the armed forces should be continued. What do I mean by that? You see, even when you are in training, it gets to a point where the guy who is going to watch your back is not from your tribe.
Well, sorry to jump in here, but when you say the process is so tedious,
yes,
the thing is, even in the National Assembly, when that clause came through, it fell through because even those who were supposed to be from the region that you say are being marginalized or discriminated against, they didn't even support it. So can we blame the other groups for them not supporting it now?
No, that's, in fact, you return to what I'm saying. People go into the National Assembly and then they say, give us constituency allowance, constituency project. They are not interested in Nigeria. They are not. So you ask those people to go through that process, they will look at it from the point of view of how is this going to favor my people. Yes.
Commander Danjuma, one of the things, well, on the one hand is that, issue that we are talking about now, amending the laws. On the other hand is the challenge of those other agencies of government who are also supposed to be tackling, insecurity challenges. They seem to be silent. We're only talking about the military and we're only talking about the police. Shouldn't they also be playing the frontal role now?
I must agree with you that the focus on the army, particularly, not even the military generally, but on the army, seems to give the impression that, the fight against terrorism, for example, is failing because the army is not doing well. But what about the DSS, or is it SSS? They are supposed, to be there gathering, intelligence. So they also have a big role, to infiltrate these organizations, to infiltrate these communities, to blend with the communities and bring out information that we can use. So to that extent, someone was even mentioning, and I agree with him, that the customs, the immigration, they also have a role to play. Every single resource in a community, in a country, should be brought to bear, in fighting this.
Would that be your solution?
Of course.
To immediate help?
You don't focus. It's a dynamic something. It's an idea, that you have to fight against. And you use everything. You use ideas, you use army, navy, air force. You even, in fact, for me, I've always said that it is the economy. It always boils down to the economy. Why there is so much turmoil, why there is so much discontent, it's not only because people lack, but because they lack in the midst of plenty. If everyone was poor, you would see that there would be a general level of calmness. But a situation whereby most people, remember about 100 million Nigerians today are said to be destitute. And this is in the largest black country in the world. So there is no way you cannot have instability. You have to.
Do we have instability in India to the magnitude of Nigeria? They have almost
A population of 1.2, over 1.2 billion, and we are just about inflated 200 million, and we have half of our population poor. Do they have about 600 million poor? They don't. So we are doing something wrong as per the economy. And unless we get it right, everything we are talking about security, because the first thing a person does when he wakes up, where am I going to get water? There is no single village or town or city in Nigeria that you can go and turn the tap and get water, common water, the fluid of life. So we really need to get our governance system working in favor of the people. If we don't do that, you carry guns, you get to a stage that people will look at you and look at your gun and say, kill me. It's better to die than remain alive, because this is not living. And Nigeria is getting to that very, very soon if we don't change the trend. And I want to make an example. In other countries, when you are below a certain level of poverty, you are not taxed. But today, the level of taxation, I was coming yesterday, I saw some government agencies stopping Okada, what we call Okada riders, and extorting money from them. The effect is that even the poor people that cannot afford transport, are forced to pay more because the Okada man will take it, on his own passengers. So I am believing that we need to sit down and look again at how we are working on this economy. We should look at the devaluation of the Naira.
Well, that's another conversation altogether. I thought he's a lieutenant commander, not former deputy CBN. But
maybe intelligence is coming to play.
If I don't mention it, some people will be disappointed. So let me just let it go.
Yes, please. Let's do that to the CBN and the economy. Well, Colonel, okay, just a quick one before we go. We need to go wrap up. Quickly, please, go ahead.
Okay. I would rather look at the professional angle. You do not deploy your most powerful asset when something happens. You don't send the army as the first choice. The United States, they have the National Guard. The army is the strongest force. The Constitution says the police is the primary agency. Let the policemen go, as you remember they did in Kano. When they were overpowered, you brought in the military. But whatever happens today, you put your best ace. Now, when they are defeated, what are you going to do? So I think those who are handling the matter at this point, I hope the re-engineering that the president talked about will bring this issue to bear. Put the police, if they are beaten, put the army. But what do? There are bandits in the northwest. Army, go there. No. And as my colleague said, the men under arms are too few. The battle space for in the northeast is too big. Borno State is bigger than Belgium. Sambisa Forest is bigger than Lagos, Ikorodu, Epe, and Badagry. How many men are you putting there? So let me just say this quickly. When my colleagues found that Boko Haram was killing them in small groups, General Minima, who was then the chief of army staff, made a presentation when we were going to look for the Chibok girls. He said, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot deploy my men in penny packets. Then he turned and saw me, Oga explained to them. Now they have super camps, so certain areas are protected. Between the super camps, there are large expanse of land that is not governed. So for me, if you do not at least double the strength of those soldiers, you will fight until eternity. They are too few, the space is too wide, the equipment are not enough.
All right.
And so Boko Haram is free to roam about.
Well, we have to anchor at that point. We thank you, gentlemen. Retired Colonel Ola Majiyogbe is a former commandant of the Nigerian Army Intelligence School, also former commandant of the SSS Academy, and a member, Presidential Fact-Finding Committee on the abduction of Chibok girls. We also have had retired Lieutenant Commander John Danjuma, former Navy intelligence officer, as well as Hannibal Owaifo, who is the president, African Bar Association. Gentlemen, thank you all for talking to us this morning.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure.